Imagine for a moment a world so ancient that money, as we know it, didn't even exist, where wealth wasn't counted in coins or currency, but in raw materials, in the very earth beneath our feet, hammered and shaped into forms that would become the lifeblood of entire civilizations. Picture a time when trade routes weren't just lines on a map, but vibrant arteries stretching across oceans and continents, connecting diverse cultures long before the first word was ever put to paper. This isn't some distant fantasy. This is the forgotten code we're about to unlock, a secret language etched into peculiar artifacts from an age shrouded in mystery. Today, we're diving deep inside the forgotten code of the Oxide Ingots, trade secrets that link the Bronze Age world, to pull back the veil on a sophisticated global network that will absolutely challenge every single one of your modern perceptions of antiquity. Now, when you first hear the term Oxide Ingot, you might scratch your head. What on earth is an Oxide Ingot? Well, picture a large, four-legged slab of copper, shaped almost like the stretched-out hide of an animal, weighing as much as a fully grown human. These weren't just random chunks of metal. They were the 29-kilogram gold standard of their time, a universal currency that enabled transactions on a scale we can barely fathom today. These weren't mere commodities. They were technological marvels, symbols of power, and concrete evidence of an interconnectedness that defies the notion of isolated ancient societies. These ingots facilitated communication, fueled economic engines, and perhaps even sparked conflicts that reshaped the very landscape of the ancient world. Each one tells a story not just of copper and trade, but of human ambition, innovation, and the relentless drive to connect and exchange. From the sun-drenched shores of Cyprus, the primary source of copper in the Bronze Age, to the bustling ports of the Aegean and the fertile lands of the Levant, these Oxide ingots traveled thousands of miles, carried by intrepid sailors and hardy merchants. They were the tangible links in a vast chain of commerce that saw ideas, technologies, and cultures flow freely across what we now call the Mediterranean. Prepare to uncover the hidden stories etched into these ancient artifacts, the silent witnesses to a bygone era. We'll explore their profound impact on Bronze Age societies, understanding how these seemingly simple objects underpinned complex economies and intricate political landscapes. Their continuing relevance in helping us decipher the ingenuity of our ancestors is undeniable. By delving into their secrets, we'll gain a deeper appreciation for the foundational infrastructure that allowed early civilizations to thrive, reminding us that even the most ancient objects hold profound lessons for our interconnected present. Get ready for a journey that will forever change the way you look at the ancient world. Our journey into the forgotten code of the Oxide ingots begins with their most striking feature, their peculiar shape. It's the first mystery we encounter, this distinctive oxide form, which, as the name suggests, truly resembles a stretched animal hide. But this wasn't some artistic whim or random casting. It was a deliberate, ingenious design choice, born from a deep understanding of practical needs in the Bronze Age world. Think about it, a piece of hammered copper weighing nearly 30 kilograms, roughly the weight of a 10-year-old child. How do you move something so heavy and valuable across vast distances, often without the aid of wheeled vehicles or even domesticated beasts of burden in some early contexts? The answer lies in that very shape, which offered multiple practical applications far beyond mere aesthetics. For one, it facilitated ease of transport. Imagine a sturdy Bronze Age merchant, or perhaps a team of porters, needing to move these heavy loads. The four legs of the Oxide ingot provided natural handles, perfect for gripping, lifting, and carrying. Some theories even suggest that the shape was perfectly ergonomic for carrying on human shoulders or for strapping onto the sides of pack animals like donkeys, allowing for a balanced load during long overland journeys. This wasn't just about moving one ingot, but dozens, hundreds, even thousands, as evidenced by shipwrecks laden with these treasures. The standardized weight and form meant that loads could be evenly distributed, making the arduous task of transportation just a little bit more manageable for the people who dedicated their lives to it. Beyond transport, the Oxide shape also lent itself to remarkable stackability. Picture a warehouse or the hold of a ship filled with these valuable ingots. Their design allowed them to be neatly interlocked and stacked like giant puzzle pieces, optimizing space and preventing them from shifting dangerously during transit, especially on rolling seas. This ability to efficiently store and transport large quantities points to a highly organized system of commerce, suggesting that these weren't just random finds of copper, but carefully produced units designed for an intentional, large-scale trade network. This standardization, embedded in their very form, is a strong indicator of a sophisticated system of production and distribution. As we dig deeper, we find that the purpose of this shape might transcend pure utility. Some scholars propose that the Oxide form carried symbolic weight, perhaps representing the animal itself, which was a fundamental source of wealth, labor, and sustenance in ancient societies. Cattle were often symbols of power, fertility, and divine favor, and to cast valuable copper into the shape of an oxhide could have imbued the ingots with an added layer of significance, recognized and respected across different cultures. This isn't just a practical object, it's potentially a profound cultural artifact, bridging the gap between the mundane and the deeply symbolic for Bronze Age peoples. And here's a truly revolutionary thought for its time. Did the Oxide shape offer a distinct advantage in preventing tampering or counterfeiting? In a world without intricate security features, a unique and difficult-to-replicate shape could have served as a rudimentary form of authentication. Imagine trying to melt down and recast a smaller, less valuable piece of copper into the precise, standardized form of an oxide ingot that was recognized across the Mediterranean. The specific dimensions, the telltale legs, and the consistent 29-kilogram weight would have made it incredibly challenging to pass off a fake. This inherent security feature, built right into the design, would have fostered trust in the trade network, ensuring that merchants and buyers alike could be relatively confident in the value and authenticity of the ingots they exchanged. This makes the Oxide ingot not just a means of transport or a symbol, but a truly revolutionary design in the history of early commerce, anticipating concepts of standardization and security that would become commonplace millennia later. So, if the Oxide shape was a stroke of genius, where did these ingenious objects actually come from? That brings us to our second major discovery, the geographies of production. For decades, the prevailing wisdom, backed by archaeological evidence, was that the vast majority of oxide ingots originated from Cyprus, an island in the eastern Mediterranean famously rich in copper. This made perfect sense. Ancient texts like those from Egypt and the Near East often referred to copper from Alasia, widely believed to be Cyprus. The island's landscape is still dotted with ancient copper mines, and its archaeological sites have yielded abundant evidence of large-scale copper smelting and processing. It seemed like the undisputed mining powerhouse of the Bronze Age, the primary source for this vital metal that fueled an entire era. Indeed, the sheer volume of oxide ingots found in the eastern Mediterranean, particularly at sites like Ugarit and Kadesh, pointed overwhelmingly to Cypriot origins. Massive slag heaps, the waste product of smelting, found in Cyprus further cemented its reputation as the industrial heartland of Bronze Age copper production. This concentration of production in a single, well-defined region suggested a degree of specialization and resource control, implying that whoever controlled Cypriot copper held immense economic and perhaps even political sway in the ancient world. It painted a picture of a centralized hub distributing its precious metal across the then-known world. However, the story, as it often does in archaeology, is becoming far more nuanced. Recent advances in archaeometallurgy, particularly through techniques like lead isotope analysis, are challenging this singular focus on Cyprus. These sophisticated scientific methods allow researchers to act like geochemical detectives, tracing the unique fingerprint of the lead isotopes found within copper back to the specific geological formations where the ore was mined. And what these new analyses are revealing is truly fascinating. A more diverse set of origins for oxide ingots than previously imagined. We're now finding irrefutable evidence that a significant number of oxide ingots also originated from Sardinia, a large island in the Western Mediterranean, which was also rich in copper deposits. This pushes the geographical scope of early industrial production much further west, indicating a more distributed network of mining and metalworking centers. The presence of Sardinian ingots in Mediterranean trade networks suggests that this island was not merely a consumer but a producer, playing a much larger role in the Bronze Age global economy than once thought. It forces us to reconsider the routes these ingots traveled and the intricate web of interactions between different regions. Beyond Cyprus and Sardinia, tantalizing clues are emerging that point to even more diverse origins, including areas within mainland Europe. While these discoveries are still less numerous than those from Cyprus or Sardinia, they highlight the possibility of smaller, regional production centers contributing to the overall supply of copper. This geographic dispersion of production raises a multitude of intriguing questions. Who controlled these diverse mining operations? Were they independent entities, or were they part of larger empires or alliances? It forces us to think about resource control in a truly international sense, long before the advent of modern corporations or nation-states. The scattered origins of these ingots also hint at complex geopolitical power dynamics. Control over copper mines meant control over wealth, technology, and military strength. Different powers would have vied for access to these vital resources, leading to alliances, rivalries, and perhaps even conflicts. It's a glimpse into the early struggles for economic dominance and the strategic importance of raw materials in shaping ancient societies. This wasn't merely about digging up dirt, it was about shaping the destiny of entire civilizations. Furthermore, this geographically dispersed production points to early industrial-scale operations in multiple locations, requiring sophisticated organization, considerable labor, and specialized knowledge for mining, smelting, and casting. It's a testament to the ingenuity and organizational capabilities of Bronze Age peoples across vast distances, laying the groundwork for further investigation into these ancient mining hubs and the complex societies that sustain them. The story of Oxide Ingots, therefore, is not just about a single island, but about a far-reaching network of interconnected production centers that powered the ancient world. This leads us directly to our next crucial discovery, the remarkable standardization of these oxide ingots in terms of their weight. Imagine trying to trade across vast distances with different cultures, languages, and local customs without a common understanding of value. What the oxide ingots offered was precisely that, a consistent, agreed-upon unit of exchange that functioned strikingly like an early form of international currency. Most of these ingots, whether unearthed from shipwrecks in the Mediterranean or found in hoards thousands of miles apart, consistently weigh around 29 kilograms. This isn't a random number, it's significant because it aligns almost perfectly with two talents, a widely recognized unit of weight in the ancient Near Eastern system. This isn't merely a coincidence, it speaks to an extraordinary level of organization and mutual agreement among diverse Bronze Age societies. Consider the challenges involved in achieving such uniformity across different mining sites, different smelting operations, and different crafting workshops. It suggests that there was a shared understanding, a universal standard that transcended local variations, making trade efficient and reliable. This standardization was instrumental in building trust between disparate cultures, allowing merchants to exchange goods with confidence, knowing that a 29-kilogram oxide ingot held the same value whether it was in Canaan, Mycenae, or Egypt. It essentially removed a huge barrier to long-distance commerce, fostering a more interconnected economic world. The implications of this standardization are profound. It transforms the oxide ingot from a mere commodity into a sophisticated financial instrument. Think about it, without a universally accepted currency or a standardized unit of value, every transaction would require tedious bartering and negotiation, potentially leading to mistrust and disputes. The consistent weight of these ingots streamlined the process, making bulk transactions feasible and reducing the need for elaborate accounting. This allowed for much larger-scale trade operations, facilitating the movement of not just copper, but countless other goods that could be valued against this stable benchmark. It's hard to overstate the importance of this kind of economic innovation in an era that predates minted coinage by more than 1,000 years. Achieving and maintaining such precision across an expansive trade network like the Bronze Age Mediterranean would have required an immense degree of administrative sophistication. Who set these standards? How were they enforced? Were there central authorities, perhaps powerful kingdoms or highly influential merchant guilds, that dictated these norms? While we don't have direct textual evidence detailing a Bronze Age standards organization, the archaeological record speaks volumes. It suggests that there were mechanisms in place, perhaps through established trade routes, influential port cities, or even shared religious beliefs and political treaties that ensured adherence to this two-talent standard. This level of coordination hints at a complex administrative overlay to the economic activities of the time, revealing a world far more organized and interconnected than we might initially imagine. This uniformity wasn't just about weight, it was about fostering an environment of economic trust and predictability. When a merchant arrived in a foreign port, they could immediately recognize the value of an oxide ingot, even if they didn't speak the local language. This universal recognition facilitated smoother negotiations and quicker transactions, greatly accelerating the pace of trade. The very existence of this standardized weight system forces us to reconsider the administrative capabilities of Bronze Age civilizations, challenging the notion of them as disparate, isolated entities. Instead, it paints a picture of a world where economic rationality and shared understanding created a powerful engine for cross-cultural exchange, enabling the flow of goods, ideas, and technologies across vast distances and connecting civilizations in an unprecedented way. This brings us to one of the most astonishing archaeological discoveries of all time, a finding that truly opened a window into the Bronze Age world: the Burun shipwreck. Discovered in the 1980s off the coast of Turkey, this single wreck was not just a shipwreck, it was a time capsule, a snapshot of ancient maritime trade frozen at the bottom of the sea. What makes the Burun wreck so significant is its incredible cargo, which included over 350 oxide ingots. This wasn't merely a handful of ingots. It was a literal mountain of them, stacked carefully within the hull of an ancient vessel, revealing the sheer scale of this copper trade in a way that no other discovery ever had. Imagine what it was like for the archaeologists when they first surveyed this site. It was like finding the mother lode, an unprecedented look into the nuts and bolts of Bronze Age commerce and interconnectedness. This single find has been likened to a Rosetta Stone for understanding ancient economies because it brought together so many elements that had previously only been speculated upon. Here in one place was tangible proof of the vast distances goods traveled, the incredible diversity of products exchanged, and the complex web of relationships that linked the powerful kingdoms and distant lands of the Bronze Age. It showed us that this ancient world was far more globalized and bustling than many had previously conceived, challenging our perceptions of antiquity as a time of isolation and limited interaction. When we delve into the details of this extraordinary archaeological site, the story of the Burun shipwreck becomes even more compelling. The vessel itself was a massive ship by Bronze Age standards, estimated to be around 15 meters long, capable of carrying an enormous load. Its cargo was not limited to just oxide ingots. It was a veritable floating marketplace. Alongside the copper, archaeologists found tin ingots, crucial for alloying with copper to make bronze. There were also thousands of shards of pottery, including Canaanite jars that once held resins or olive oil, and Mycenaean stirrup jars from Greece. Further enriching the picture were luxury goods, ebony logs from Nubia, hippopotamus and elephant ivory, ostrich eggshells, and even rare, colorful glass ingots. Also among the treasures were exquisite jewelry, cylinder seals from Mesopotamia, and even a gold scarab bearing the name of Nefertiti, the Egyptian queen. This incredible inventory allows us to reconstruct the intricate trade routes of the Bronze Age with an unprecedented level of detail. The ship's manifest tells a story of a journey that likely began in the Near East, perhaps in Canaan or Cyprus, and was heading west, possibly towards the Aegean or even further. Each item on board provides a clue to the ship's itinerary and the wide-ranging connections of the merchants who orchestrated this voyage. For example, the presence of Mycenaean pottery suggests contact with mainland Greece, while the ebony and ivory point to trade with Egypt and its southern territories. It paints a vivid picture of a vibrant and bustling ancient world where goods, ideas, and people moved with surprising fluidity across the Mediterranean Sea. The sheer volume and variety of the goods found on the Burun ship underscore that the trade in oxide ingots was not an isolated phenomenon, but rather the backbone of a sophisticated, intercontinental economic system that thrived thousands of years ago. It essentially demonstrates a fully operational Bronze Age economy right before our eyes. This interconnectedness, so vividly displayed by the Burun shipwreck, leads us directly to the fifth major revelation about oxide ingots, the vast trade routes and networks that truly functioned as a Bronze Age Silk Road. The spread of these distinctive copper ingots across the entire Mediterranean basin, from the island of Sardinia in the west, eastward through Crete, the Levant, and all the way to Egypt, paints an astonishing picture of ancient globalization. These were not simply isolated voyages or sporadic exchanges between neighboring communities. They were integral parts of a complex, sophisticated web of commerce that spanned thousands of miles and linked disparate, powerful civilizations. Think of it as an oceanic superhighway, a bustling network where goods, ideas, and even people moved with remarkable frequency, transforming the ancient world into a highly integrated marketplace. These maritime trade routes, driven by the demand for raw materials like copper and tin, as well as luxury goods and foodstuffs, were incredibly ambitious undertakings for their time. Imagine the sheer scale of the logistical challenges faced by these ancient mariners and merchants. They navigated without sophisticated mapping tools or modern navigational aids, relying instead on celestial observations, coastal landmarks, and generations of accumulated knowledge about winds and currents. The ships themselves, while robust for their era, were still at the mercy of the elements, vulnerable to sudden storms, treacherous currents, and hidden reefs. Yet, despite these formidable obstacles, they devised innovative solutions. They built sturdy, deep-hulled vessels capable of carrying substantial cargo over long distances, often employing a combination of sails and oars. They established ports of call and trading posts along the major routes, creating a logistical backbone for these extensive journeys. These stops served not just as places to resupply, but also as vital hubs where goods could be transshipped, information exchanged, and deals struck. Beyond the challenges of the open sea, the merchants also had to contend with the complexities of land routes connecting inland mines to coastal ports. Moving heavy oxide ingots from copper-rich regions like the mines of Cyprus or Sardinia to waiting ships required organized labor, reliable transport animals, and secure pathways. This often involved negotiating passage through diverse territories, sometimes friendly, sometimes less so, necessitating alliances, diplomatic relations, and perhaps even armed escorts to protect valuable cargo. The network wasn't solely about copper, it was a system of reciprocal exchange. While Cypriot copper flowed out, goods from Egypt, Mesopotamia, Anatolia, and the Aegean flowed back in, creating a dynamic economic ecosystem. For example, Egyptian grain could be traded for Aegean olive oil, which might then be exchanged for Mesopotamian textiles, all facilitated by the underlying value of the copper ingots as a form of proto-currency or valuable commodity. This intricate dance of supply and demand fostered economic interdependence, meaning that a disruption in one part of the network could have ripple effects across the entire Bronze Age world, underscoring just how deeply connected these societies truly were. This incredible web of ancient trade, while fascinating, would remain largely theoretical without concrete evidence, and this brings us to our sixth key indicator: the groundbreaking power of material analysis and provenance, specifically through a technique called isotopic analysis. Imagine scientific detective work so precise it can trace a piece of ancient copper smelted thousands of years ago back to the very mine it was dug from. That's exactly what archaeometallurgy allows researchers to do with oxide ingots, providing the undeniable proof that turns theories about their origin and movement into established fact. It's like giving each ingot a unique fingerprint and then matching that fingerprint to a specific geological location. This isn't mere speculation, it's a sophisticated forensic science. Every copper ore deposit on Earth has a distinct chemical signature, a unique ratio of different isotopes of elements like lead and copper. When the copper is mined and then smelted into an ingot, these isotopic ratios are largely preserved within the metal. By taking a tiny sample from an oxide ingot and analyzing its isotopic composition in a highly specialized laboratory, scientists can compare that signature to known geological databases of copper deposits around the ancient world. If the isotopic ratios of an ingot match those found in, say, a mine in Cyprus, then we have incredibly strong evidence that the copper for that particular ingot originated there, even if the ingot itself was discovered thousands of miles away in a shipwreck off Turkey or a palace in Crete. This meticulous process helps confirm long-standing theories that islands like Cyprus were indeed major copper producers, but it also reveals surprises, sometimes pointing to unexpected sources and expanding our understanding of the Bronze Age resource landscape. This scientific detective work goes beyond simply identifying the source. It allows us to reconstruct the intricate journeys these ingots undertook from the Earth to their final destinations. Think about it. Once we know where the copper came from and where the finished ingot was found, we can start to map out the ancient supply chains with remarkable precision. This reveals a level of organization and resource management that is truly astonishing for a period without written records of logistics or modern communication. We can visualize the raw ore being extracted from the mine, transported to a nearby smelting site, then cast into the distinctive oxide shape, and finally carried by human or animal power to a coastal port. From there, it would be loaded onto a ship sailing across treacherous seas, perhaps making stops at various trading hubs before reaching its ultimate market. This process of tracing the copper's journey also sheds light on the economic power dynamics of the Bronze Age. Control over valuable resources like copper meant immense wealth and influence. By identifying which regions were producing the most ingots and where those ingots were being consumed or traded, archaeologists and historians can gain a deeper understanding of the relationships between different Bronze Age states, their economic dependencies, and the ways in which resources fueled the rise and fall of empires. It allows us to pinpoint the major players in the copper trade and understand the scale of their operations. The chemical signatures within the metal are not just scientific data. They are whispers from the past, revealing the meticulous planning, coordinated labor, and vast networks that underpin the ancient world's most vital industries. This scientific detective work goes beyond simply identifying the source. It allows us to reconstruct the intricate journeys these ingots undertook from the Earth to their final destinations. Think about it. Once we know where the copper came from and where the finished ingot was found, we can start to map out the ancient supply chains with remarkable precision. This reveals a level of organization and resource management that is truly astonishing for a period without written records of logistics or modern communication. We can visualize the raw ore being extracted from the mine, transported to a nearby smelting site, then cast into the distinctive oxide shape, and finally carried by human or animal power to a coastal port. From there, it would be loaded onto a ship sailing across treacherous seas, perhaps making stops at various trading hubs before reaching its ultimate market. This process of tracing the copper's journey also sheds light on the economic power dynamics of the Bronze Age. Control over valuable resources like copper meant immense wealth and influence. By identifying which regions were producing the most ingots and where those ingots were being consumed or traded, archaeologists and historians can gain a deeper understanding of the relationships between different Bronze Age states, their economic dependencies, and the ways in which resources fueled the rise and fall of empires. It allows us to pinpoint the major players in the copper trade and understand the scale of their operations. The chemical signatures within the metal are not just scientific data. They are whispers from the past, revealing the meticulous planning, coordinated labor, and vast networks that underpin the ancient world's most vital industries. These copper ingots, with their reliable weight and distinct shape, were far more than just raw material. They represented significant wealth, functioning as a kind of early currency for transactions on a truly grand scale. Imagine leaders negotiating alliances or states paying tribute. These exchanges weren't typically happening with handfuls of small coins, but with substantial ingots, each one a testament to economic power. Their sheer size and consistent value made them ideal for large-scale deals between kingdoms and empires, acting as a universal medium of exchange that transcended linguistic barriers and local currencies. The possession of multiple oxide ingots would have immediately conveyed immense status and power within Bronze Age societies. influencing social hierarchies by visibly demonstrating who controlled significant resources. Think of them as the gold reserves of their time, a tangible symbol of national prosperity and influence. This wealth wasn't just for show. It directly underpinned the economies of emerging empires and kingdoms, driving the accumulation of resources essential for their growth and stability. Access to copper meant the ability to arm armies with bronze weapons and armor, to produce tools for agriculture and construction, and to create luxury goods that solidified elite power. The trade in Oxide ingots fueled the development of sophisticated administrative structures necessary to manage such complex economic systems. Imagine the logistics involved in overseeing mining operations, smelting, transport, and the eventual distribution of this vital metal. It required organized labor, record-keeping, and centralized authority. This wasn't merely about commerce, it was about statecraft, as control over the copper trade directly translated into political leverage and military might, ultimately shaping the political landscape of the entire Bronze Age world. The flow of these ingots dictated which powers rose and which declined, illustrating the profound connection between economic control and geopolitical dominance in antiquity. The widespread distribution of oxide ingots across the ancient world couldn't have happened without truly advanced maritime capabilities, showcasing the incredible ingenuity of Bronze Age civilizations. This wasn't merely about having boats, it was about mastering the Mediterranean Sea itself, navigating its currents, winds, and dangers to connect distant lands. Think about the ship designs of that era. They were robust, designed to carry heavy payloads like these 290-kilogram ingots, yet still agile enough to be propelled by both sails and oars. We've seen archaeological evidence, like the reconstruction of the Burun ship, that gives us a glimpse into these vessels. They were often broad-beamed, strong wooden hulls, built to withstand the open sea, often propelled by a single, large square sail, and rowers when the winds were unfavorable or when maneuvering in harbors. But it wasn't just the ships, it was the people who sailed them. Bronze Age sailors possessed remarkable navigational skills, far beyond what many might imagine for a time without compasses or GPS. They relied on a sophisticated understanding of celestial bodies, charting their courses by the stars, the sun, and the moon. They observed prevailing winds, ocean currents, and the flight patterns of birds, gathering an intuitive knowledge of the sea that guided them on voyages lasting weeks or even months. Imagine the courage it took to set sail into the vast, open sea, often out of sight of land for extended periods, relying only on their knowledge and observation. The perils of ancient sea travel were immense: sudden storms, rocky coastlines, shallow reefs, and the constant threat of piracy. Yet, these merchants and mariners undertook these dangerous journeys repeatedly, underscoring the immense value they placed on the trade of goods like copper ingots. The organization of these large-scale expeditions was equally impressive. It wasn't just a single ship here and there. It was a network of voyages requiring careful planning, provisioning, and coordination. This suggests a highly developed system of trade that involved not just individual entrepreneurs but possibly state-sponsored ventures, ensuring the safe passage and delivery of these vital resources. This mastery of seafaring allowed merchants to traverse the open seas, connecting disparate cultures and fostering unprecedented levels of exchange, not just of material goods but also of ideas, technologies, and artistic styles. It paints a picture of a dynamic, interconnected world, where the sea was not a barrier but a highway for prosperity and cultural diffusion. The ability to move such massive quantities of copper across the Mediterranean truly highlights a remarkable chapter in human innovation and daring, demonstrating how critical maritime prowess was to the economic and social fabric of the Bronze Age. The dynamic movement of oxide ingots across the ancient world transcended simple buying and selling. It was a powerful catalyst for profound cultural exchange and intricate diplomatic relations. These heavy copper ingots, far from being mere commodities, served as tangible links that facilitated the spread of not only goods but also groundbreaking technologies, innovative ideas, and rich artistic styles between diverse civilizations. Imagine these ingots arriving in a distant land, not just as raw material, but perhaps as part of a royal gift, a testament to a newly forged alliance, or even a form of tribute solidifying peace between powerful rulers. Such exchanges weren't solely economic, they were deeply imbued with social and political significance, acting as silent envoys that carried more than just their weight in copper. Consider how these economic ties inadvertently led to the blending of artistic expressions. As merchants and emissaries traveled, they brought with them not just their wares but also their aesthetic preferences, their decorative motifs, and their methods of craftsmanship. A pattern seen on a Mycenaean vase might find its way onto a Cypriot metalwork, or an Egyptian design could influence Syro-Palestinian ivory carvings. The constant flow of goods meant a constant flow of visual language, fostering a shared artistic vocabulary across the Mediterranean. This wasn't a deliberate strategy to spread culture, but a natural byproduct of interconnectedness, enriching the artistic tapestry of the Bronze Age in ways that are still visible in archaeological finds today. Moreover, the trade in oxide ingots played a crucial role in the dissemination of technological innovations, particularly in metallurgy itself. The demand for these ingots pushed the boundaries of mining techniques and smelting processes. As copper moved from its source to its destination, so too did the knowledge of how to extract it efficiently and transform it into valuable objects. A discovery in Cyprus about improving copper purification could, through trade networks, eventually inform metalworkers in Sardinia or the Aegean, leading to widespread advancements that benefited countless communities. This sharing of practical know-how wasn't limited to metallurgy. It extended to shipbuilding, navigation, and even agricultural practices, creating a more technologically sophisticated and interdependent world. Beyond the tangible, these trade routes also provided informal channels for the exchange of religious beliefs and philosophical concepts. While hard evidence is scarce, it's reasonable to infer that merchants and sailors, spending weeks or months in foreign ports, would have encountered different deities, rituals, and worldviews. Such interactions, however brief, could sow seeds of new ideas, leading to syncretism in religious practices or the adoption of foreign cults. This constant, albeit subtle, cross-pollination of spiritual and intellectual traditions further transformed the Bronze Age into a more interconnected and cosmopolitan era, where ideas, much like the ingots themselves, were constantly in motion. The ability of these economic pathways to foster such a vibrant intermingling of cultures, technologies, and ideas truly built a web of relationships that extended far beyond mere commercial transactions, shaping the very fabric of ancient civilization. The creation of these oxide ingots, from raw earth to finished product, demanded an astonishing level of skill and ingenuity from the craftsmen of the Bronze Age. It wasn't simply about digging up dirt. It required sophisticated mining techniques to extract the copper ore from the very heart of mountains. Imagine communities of ancient miners, often working in incredibly challenging conditions, using rudimentary tools like stone hammers and antler picks to chip away at rock faces, sometimes deep underground in dark, claustrophobic tunnels. They had to navigate complex geological formations, identify rich ore veins, and then painstakingly extract tons of material, a task that was not only physically grueling but also incredibly dangerous. Evidence from ancient mine shafts shows how these resilient individuals followed the veins, often lighting fires to heat the rock, then dousing it with water to cause it to crack and spall, making it easier to break apart. This wasn't brute force alone, it was a clever application of early engineering and geological understanding. Once the ore was extracted, the true magic began with the metallurgical processes that transformed it into pure copper and then into the iconic oxide shape. This involved a series of intricate steps, starting with crushing the ore into smaller pieces, often using heavy stone grinders. Then came the smelting, a complex chemical process that required immense heat and precise control. Picture large, purpose-built furnaces, often located near the mines themselves to reduce transport costs. These furnaces could reach temperatures hot enough to separate the copper from its rocky impurities. This wasn't a simple campfire. It involved carefully constructed kilns, often with bellows to pump in air and intensify the heat, demonstrating an advanced understanding of thermal dynamics. The air blast was crucial as it allowed the copper to melt and separate more efficiently from the slag, which is the waste product. The metallurgists were the true alchemists of their time, possessing the specialized knowledge to control these fires and recognize when the copper was ready. They understood the nuances of the raw materials, knowing which ores yielded the best copper and how to refine it. Once molten, the pure copper would be tapped from the furnace and poured into pre-prepared molds, which were typically made of clay or stone to form the distinct oxide shape. The consistency of these ingots, as we discussed earlier, speaks volumes about the mastery of these casting techniques. It wasn't just about pouring liquid metal. It required skilled hands to ensure the right amount, the correct cooling, and the exact form was achieved time and again. This entire process, from mining to casting, represents a monumental feat of technological prowess and cooperative labor, highlighting the incredible capability of Bronze Age artisans to turn the Earth's resources into the very foundation of their global economy. Beyond the incredible feat of their creation, many oxide ingots carry an additional layer of mystery, elusive markings, symbols, or even what appear to be early forms of writing etched or incised onto their surfaces. These aren't just random scratches, they are deliberate notations, silent whispers from the Bronze Age, capable of unlocking profound insights into who made them, who owned them, and where they were destined. Imagine holding one of these heavy copper blocks, feeling the smooth, cool metal, and seeing a symbol that no one has yet fully understood. What could it mean? Was it a trademark, a quality control stamp, a record of its weight, or perhaps even the signature of the master smith who poured it? One of the most common types of markings found on oxide ingots are those often referred to as potter's marks or owner's marks. These simple signs, sometimes resembling geometric shapes, lines, or stylized figures, were likely applied when the copper was still molten or shortly after casting. Their very existence suggests a system of accountability and identification, which is crucial for any large-scale trade operation. Think about a modern shipping company. Every package has a tracking number and a sender's address. These ancient marks might have served a similar purpose, helping to identify the source of the ingot at the mine or smelting site, or perhaps indicating the merchant or state apparatus responsible for its transport. Some scholars have even proposed they could denote specific batches of production, allowing for quality control or inventory management, a concept that speaks to a level of administrative sophistication we might otherwise underestimate in the Bronze Age. Even more intriguing are the rare instances where these markings seem to hint at early writing systems. While not as developed as full scripts, these enigmatic signs bear resemblances to syllabic or ideographic symbols found in contemporary Bronze Age scripts like Cypro-Minoan, Linear A, or even early Anatolian hieroglyphs. If these are indeed proto-writing, their interpretation could revolutionize our understanding of Bronze Age literacy and record-keeping in a commercial context. What if an ingot carries the name of a ruler, a merchant guild, or a specific temple that commissioned its production? Or perhaps it details the quantity, the recipient, or even the price in a coded form. The challenges in deciphering these ancient notations are immense, given the limited corpus of examples and the absence of a Rosetta Stone for many of these early scripts. However, every new discovery brings us closer to potentially unlocking their secrets, offering tantalizing clues about the administrative and commercial practices of the time. Consider the implications of such decipherment, a glimpse into the minds of the people who organized this vast trade network. Imagine being able to read the instructions given to a ship captain, the inventory notes of a warehouse manager, or the agreements between different city-states. These marks are not just decorative, they are fragments of an ancient ledger, a ledger that documents the flow of wealth and the connections between distant lands. They speak to a need for clear communication and verifiable information within a complex economic system, a system that relied on trust and codified practices. The very act of applying these marks suggests a legal or commercial framework where disputes over ownership or origin could be settled by referring to these inscribed identifiers. It forces us to reconsider the level of legal and commercial sophistication present in Bronze Age societies, moving beyond simple barter to a system with established rules and verifiable credentials. Furthermore, the variations in these markings across different ingots and excavation sites can help archaeologists and historians map out trade routes with even greater precision. If a certain type of mark is consistently found on ingots from a specific region, and then those ingots appear in distant lands, it provides concrete evidence of a direct or indirect trade link. This scientific detective work, combined with material analysis that traces the copper to its geological source, paints an increasingly detailed picture of the Bronze Age's economic geography. The very presence of these inscriptions underscores a fundamental aspect of ancient commerce, the desire to formalize transactions and establish clear lines of responsibility in a world without common written contracts. These marks are not just symbols, they are testaments to early concepts of intellectual property, brand recognition, and commercial law, embedded directly into the very essence of the goods being traded. The story of the Oxide ingots, as fascinating as it is, eventually reaches its dramatic conclusion, deeply intertwined with one of history's most perplexing mysteries, the Late Bronze Age collapse. Imagine a world where thriving civilizations, interconnected by vibrant trade routes and diplomatic ties, suddenly face a cascade of catastrophic events. This wasn't a slow decline, but rather a rapid, widespread unraveling that saw major powers like the Mycenaeans, the Hittites, and even parts of the new Kingdom of Egypt experience devastating setbacks. The very system that facilitated the widespread use of Oxide ingots, a system built on trust, established routes, and stable political structures, began to fray and ultimately shattered. The once bustling ports and trade hubs fell silent, and with them, the demand for these meticulously crafted copper units dwindled. Multiple factors likely converged to bring about this period of immense upheaval, and understanding them can shed light on the fragility of interconnected global systems, even those operating thousands of years ago. One significant theory points to widespread environmental changes. Prolonged droughts, for instance, could have led to successive crop failures, causing widespread famine and social unrest across vast regions. Imagine entire populations struggling to feed themselves, leading to internal conflicts and mass migrations. This kind of environmental stress would naturally disrupt agricultural production, which was the bedrock of ancient economies, starving out not just people, but also the raw materials and labor needed for mining and metallurgy. When food security collapses, the luxury of international trade in valuable commodities like copper ingots quickly becomes secondary to basic survival. Another compelling explanation for the collapse involves a wave of migrations and invasions, particularly by groups often referred to as the Sea Peoples. These enigmatic raiders, whose origins and exact nature remain a subject of intense debate, are documented in Egyptian texts as devastating coastal settlements and disrupting maritime trade. Picture fleets of desperate or opportunistic warriors descending upon port cities, burning them to the ground and seizing cargo. Such sustained attacks would have rendered long-distance sea travel incredibly perilous, effectively severing the very arteries that carried oxide ingots across the Mediterranean. If merchants and sailors could no longer guarantee the safe passage of their valuable cargo, the entire system of exchange would grind to a halt, making the production of ingots economically unviable. The risk simply became too great, the cost of protection too high. Furthermore, internal revolts and systemic weaknesses within the major Bronze Age empires may have played a significant role. Perhaps the populations, already strained by environmental challenges and external threats, rose up against oppressive regimes, leading to civil wars and the breakdown of central authority. The complex administrative structures that manage the production and distribution of oxide ingots, ensuring their standardization and safe transport, would have crumbled under such pressures. Without a strong central power to enforce trade agreements, maintain infrastructure, or protect trade routes, the sophisticated network that relied on the oxide ingot as its universal currency would inevitably unravel. The specialized knowledge and labor required for mining and smelting might also have been lost or dispersed as communities fractured and populations shifted. The decline of the oxide ingot trade, therefore, serves as a poignant barometer of the wider Bronze Age collapse. It wasn't just a commodity that disappeared, it was an entire economic ecosystem that ceased to function. The shift from a highly interconnected global economy where standardized copper units flowed freely to a more localized, fragmented system marks a pivotal turning point in human history. This transformation forced societies to adapt, to develop new forms of exchange, and to rebuild their economies from the ruins of a once flourishing world. The fate of the oxide ingot reminds us that even the most robust and seemingly indispensable systems are vulnerable to a confluence of environmental, social, and political pressures. The story of the oxide ingots and their eventual decline offers far more than just a historical account. It provides profound lessons about modern relevance, particularly concerning the dynamics of globalization, the intricate interconnectedness of economies, and the critical importance of resource management for societal stability. While thousands of years separate us from the Bronze Age, the patterns of advantage and vulnerability within complex trade networks remain strikingly similar. Just as the ancient world relied on the steady flow of copper for tools and weapons, our contemporary global economy depends on delicate supply chains for everything from microchips to medicines. The Bronze Age illustrates a profound historical precedent. When those chains are disrupted, the entire system can unravel with surprising speed. Consider for a moment how the standardization of the oxide ingot, its consistent weight and shape, fostered trust across diverse cultures. This mirrors the trust we place in international currency exchange rates, global shipping standards, or even digital protocols that allow seamless transactions across borders. Without such agreed-upon norms, trade slows, suspicion grows, and economic activity contracts. The Bronze Age merchants faced similar challenges, navigating linguistic barriers and cultural differences, much like today's multinational corporations or international trade organizations. Their success hinged on reliability and predictability, qualities that are still paramount in building and sustaining a globalized world. The collapse of the Oxide ingot trade, deeply tied to widespread environmental changes, provides a stark warning about sustainability and resource management. The ancient reliance on copper from specific regions meant that localized disruptions, whether from drought impacting mining communities or political instability cutting off supply lines, had ripple effects across the entire known world. This echoes our present-day concerns over climate change, dwindling natural resources, and the geopolitical implications of controlling vital raw materials. We see how a reliance on a single resource or source can create immense vulnerability. The lessons from the Bronze Age suggest that diversification of resources, careful management of environmental impact, and proactive strategies for resilience are not new concepts but timeless necessities for sustained prosperity. Furthermore, the external threats faced by Bronze Age civilizations, such as the enigmatic sea peoples, highlight the fragility of trade routes in the face of insecurity. Piracy, raiding, and the general breakdown of order can quickly shut down the economic arteries of a global system. In our own time, we see parallels in the threats to shipping lanes, cyber attacks on critical infrastructure, or regional conflicts that disrupt global supply chains. The Bronze Age demonstrates that economic prosperity is not merely about production but also about protection and the maintenance of stability across vast geographic areas. Without a secure environment for trade, even the most valuable commodities cease to flow and economies contract. The internal weaknesses that contributed to the Bronze Age collapse, such as social unrest or the weakening of central authorities, also offer insights into contemporary challenges. When the social contract frays, when populations are strained beyond their limits, or when governance structures fail, the intricate systems of trade and finance become unsustainable. The administrative sophistication required to manage the Oxide ingot trade tracking production, ensuring standardization, and overseeing distribution would have been considerable. Its breakdown underscores that economic complexity requires robust and stable societal foundations. This reminds us that strong institutions, social cohesion, and equitable governance are not just ideals but practical necessities for maintaining a complex, interconnected global economy. Ultimately, the enduring human drive for exchange, evident in the Bronze Age trade of Oxide ingots, remains a powerful force. Despite collapses and setbacks throughout history, humanity consistently rebuilds and re-establishes connections. The story of these ancient copper units is a testament to our innate desire to trade, to explore, and to connect across vast distances. It showcases humanity's incredible adaptability and resilience, reminding us that while systems may rise and fall, the fundamental drive for commerce and communication persists. This persistence in the face of vulnerabilities is perhaps the most enduring lesson from the forgotten code of the Oxide ingots. The story of the Oxide ingots, and indeed much of our understanding of the Bronze Age, comes alive through the meticulous work of archaeologists who employ an incredible array of innovative methods to unearth and interpret the past. It's a bit like detective work, but on a grand scale spanning millennia. When we talk about finding an Oxide ingot, it often conjures images of dusty land excavations, but a significant number of these treasures, along with the ships that carried them, have been found beneath the waves, making underwater archaeology absolutely vital. Imagine the sheer dedication and specialized skills required to explore a shipwreck, sometimes hundreds of feet below the surface, delicately cataloging and recovering artifacts that have been preserved by the ocean for thousands of years. Divers must contend with currents, limited visibility, and the unforgiving pressure of the deep sea, all while meticulously mapping the site to ensure every piece of the puzzle is accounted for. This isn't just about pulling things out of the water. It's about understanding the context, the position of each ingot, the type of wood used in the ship, and even the everyday items carried by the crew, all of which paint a richer picture of ancient maritime life and trade routes. Once these ancient artifacts, whether from land or sea, are brought to the surface, the real scientific detective work begins in the laboratory. This is where advanced analytical techniques truly transform fragmented evidence into a comprehensive narrative. Take, for instance, the process of provenance studies for the oxide ingots themselves. It's not enough to just know they are copper. Archaeologists and archaeometallurgists use sophisticated methods like isotopic analysis to trace the copper back to its original geological source. By analyzing the unique ratios of lead isotopes within the metal, scientists can match the ingot's chemical signature to specific copper mines, whether in Cyprus, Sardinia, or elsewhere. This tells us exactly where the raw material originated, offering undeniable proof of ancient trade connections and revealing the vast distances these goods traveled. It's like DNA evidence for ancient metal, linking an object thousands of years old directly to its birthplace. Beyond identifying the raw materials, archaeologists also employ techniques to understand the manufacturing process of the oxide ingots. For example, microscopic analysis of the metal structure can reveal details about the smelting temperature and the casting methods used by Bronze Age metallurgists. Did they use open molds or closed ones? How efficient were their furnaces? Even tiny inclusions or impurities within the copper can provide clues about the specific ores used and the skill of the ancient artisans. Sometimes, residues found on the surface of the ingots or within the crucibles discovered at ancient production sites can be chemically analyzed to understand what was smelted alongside the copper or how the molds were prepared. This level of detail allows us to reconstruct the technological prowess of the Bronze Age, moving beyond simple assumptions to concrete evidence of their metallurgical expertise. Furthermore, the study of associated artifacts found alongside oxide ingots provides invaluable context. When an ingot is discovered in a settlement, archaeologists don't just focus on the metal. They also meticulously examine the surrounding soil for pollen, seeds, or animal bones, which can offer insights into the environment, diet, and even the specific activities being performed in that area. If the ingot is found within a workshop, examining the tools, hearths, and other debris can illuminate the processes by which the copper was perhaps further worked or traded. Even the stratigraphy, the layers of earth in which artifacts are found, provides a chronological framework, allowing researchers to date the objects and understand their place within the broader timeline of human activity. These interdisciplinary approaches, combining geology, chemistry, botany, and zoology with traditional archaeological methods, create a holistic picture that enriches our understanding of Bronze Age societies. The advent of digital technologies has also revolutionized how archaeologists unearth and study the past. Three-dimensional modeling and photogrammetry allow for incredibly precise documentation of excavation sites, whether on land or underwater. Every artifact, its exact position, and its relationship to other objects can be digitally recorded and then virtually reconstructed, allowing researchers to revisit a site long after it has been excavated. Remote sensing technologies like ground-penetrating radar can even help locate buried structures or artifacts without disturbing the ground, guiding archaeologists to promising areas and minimizing destructive excavation. These technological advancements have not only made the process more efficient, but have also enabled a level of analysis and preservation that was unimaginable just a few decades ago, ensuring that the stories of the Oxide ingots and the entire Bronze Age world continue to be pieced together with ever-increasing accuracy and detail. While the practical advantages of the Oxide ingot shape are clear, its four projecting legs making it easy to carry, stack, and possibly even secure for transport, some scholars wonder if its form resonated with deeper meanings for Bronze Age peoples. Could its distinctive silhouette have been more than just functional? Perhaps it held symbolic or even ritualistic significance, linking it to the animal that was a fundamental cornerstone of ancient economies and spiritual life, cattle. In many ancient cultures, from the Near East to Europe, cattle were not just livestock. They were powerful symbols of wealth, status, fertility, and divine favor. Their horns adorned temples, their images appeared in religious art, and their hides were used for everything from clothing to shelter. Given this reverence, it's not a leap to consider that a copper ingot, meticulously crafted into a shape reminiscent of a stretched oxhide, might have carried a much richer meaning than just its weight in metal. This perspective raises fascinating questions about how economic and spiritual beliefs intertwined in the Bronze Age. Was the shape a subtle nod to the source of the ingot's value, the wealth that cattle represented, or perhaps a form of blessing or protection for the valuable cargo? Imagine a Bronze Age merchant overseeing the loading of these ingots onto a ship. Might the oxide form have offered a sense of security, invoking the power and blessing associated with the revered animal? Or perhaps, when used in high-level transactions or as offerings, the shape itself enhanced the perceived value and sacredness of the copper. It's possible that the symbolism was intuitive, a shared understanding across cultures that recognized the profound connection between an ox's hide and prosperity. This potential dual purpose, both practical and symbolic, speaks to the sophisticated ways ancient societies integrated their material world with their belief systems. Consider the religious iconography of the time. Throughout the Bronze Age Mediterranean, bull motifs were prominent in art, cult practices, and mythology. Think of the Minoan bull leaping frescoes or the bull figures found in Hittite and Ugaritic religious contexts. This pervasive imagery suggests that the bull, and by extension its hide, was deeply embedded in the collective consciousness. If a community recognized wealth and divine power in the form of a bull, then an ingot shaped like its hide might have been seen as imbued with those same qualities. This could have made the ingots not just a medium of exchange, but objects with an almost sacred aura for those involved in the trade, further solidifying trust and value in transactions over vast distances. It adds a compelling layer to our understanding of how these ingots functioned in a world where the sacred and the mundane were often inseparable. While hard proof of this symbolic interpretation remains elusive, the very possibility challenges us to look beyond purely utilitarian explanations for ancient design. It encourages us to consider the rich cultural tapestry that overlaid economic practices in the Bronze Age. The fact that the oxhide shape persisted for centuries across diverse regions, even when other, simpler forms of copper ingots existed, lends some credence to the idea that there was more to it than just convenience. Perhaps its widespread adoption wasn't just about efficiency, but also about a shared cultural recognition of its deeper significance, making it universally accepted and trusted. Delving into these speculative but intriguing possibilities of symbolic meaning adds yet another layer of depth to these remarkable ancient artifacts, transforming them from mere commodities into objects that eloquently speak of the complex minds and beliefs of our Bronze Age ancestors. Beyond the enigmatic shape and symbolic possibilities, the true magic of the oxide ingots lies in the human stories behind their movement. Imagine the Bronze Age, a world teeming with risk and opportunity, where the vast distances separating copper mines from bustling city-states were traversed by countless individuals, each playing a vital role in the grand tapestry of ancient commerce. These were the merchants, the daring sailors, the tireless porters, and the resourceful traders, the crucial middlemen whose lives, though largely unrecorded, were absolutely essential to connecting the ancient world. Their stories are not etched in stone or written on scrolls, but they are intrinsically woven into the very fabric of the trade routes themselves. Consider the merchant, the orchestrator of these grand ventures. He wasn't simply a buyer and seller. He was an entrepreneur, an adventurer, and often a diplomat. His days would begin long before dawn, perhaps bargaining for the next shipment of ingots, assessing market demands in distant lands, or meticulously charting a course across unpredictable seas. He would need to master multiple languages, understand complex weight systems, and possess an acute awareness of political landscapes, for a sudden shift in alliances could turn a profitable journey into a perilous one. Were his motivations solely economic, or was there also a sense of pride in connecting disparate cultures, in bringing exotic goods and ideas to his homeland? It's fascinating to speculate on the personal sacrifices these individuals made, leaving their families for months, even years, trusting their lives to the whims of the sea and the integrity of strangers. Then there are the mariners, the unsung heroes of Bronze Age trade. These were men who possessed an intimate knowledge of the winds, the currents, and the constellations, navigating vast stretches of open water without the aid of sophisticated instruments. Picture them aboard a sturdy yet humble ship, perhaps like the one from Burun, its hold laden with hundreds of heavy oxide ingots, alongside exotic timbers, pottery, and precious metals. Their lives were a constant dance with danger, sudden storms that could capsize their vessel, hidden reefs that could tear open a hull, or the ever-present threat of piracy from opportunistic raiders. Yet they pressed on, propelled by the promise of profit back home, the thrill of discovery, and perhaps a deep-seated love for the sea. The rhythmic creak of the timbers, the salty spray, and the shared camaraderie of the crew would have been their constant companions as they sailed into the unknown, forging the very pathways of ancient globalization. And what about the porters, the laborers, who facilitated the land-based segments of these journeys? Imagine the sheer physical effort involved in moving a single 29-kilogram oxide ingot, let alone hundreds of them. Whether from mine to coastal port or from a shipwreck site inland, these were strong backs and tireless hands. They would have navigated rugged terrain, endured harsh weather, and faced the constant strain of heavy loads, often with rudimentary equipment. Their work highlights the fundamental division of labor in these ancient societies, where specialized skills and sheer physical strength were both indispensable. While the merchant might have been the brains of the operation and the sailor its daring heart, the porter was undoubtedly its muscle, the quiet force that kept the valuable copper flowing through the ancient world's intricate circulatory system. These are the human stories, the unwritten narratives that breathe life into the archaeological finds. When we look at a gleaming oxide ingot today, we're not just seeing a lump of copper, we're seeing the culmination of countless individual efforts, the bravery of sailors who dared to cross uncharted waters, the shrewd calculations of merchants who risked fortunes, and the sheer endurance of laborers who moved mountains of metal. Their collective drive to trade, to connect, and to prosper shaped the Bronze Age in profound ways, fostering innovation, spreading ideas, and laying the groundwork for the complex societies that would follow. With a clearer picture of the human effort invested in moving these valuable ingots, it's natural to wonder about their actual worth. What exactly could one of these 29-kilogram oxide ingots buy in the bustling markets of the Bronze Age? Directly comparing their value to modern currency is incredibly challenging, almost like trying to equate apples and oranges across millennia. However, archaeological discoveries and the rare ancient texts that have survived offer tantalizing glimpses into the purchasing power of copper and, by extension, these substantial ingots. They give us a sense of the sheer economic significance that sailed the ancient seas, shedding light on the wealth that flowed through these early trade networks. Consider the raw material itself, copper. In the Bronze Age, copper was a strategic commodity, essential for crafting everything from tools and agricultural implements to weapons and decorative items. It was the plastic of its day, fundamental to daily life and military might. Ancient records from regions like Mesopotamia and Egypt sometimes provide equivalencies for copper against other goods. For example, some texts suggest that a certain weight of copper could purchase a specific amount of grain, a staple food, or even a determined amount of labor for agricultural tasks or construction projects. While these records aren't always directly tied to oxide ingots, they illuminate the general economic landscape and the high demand for copper, positioning these ingots as major assets. Moreover, the standardized weight of the oxide ingot, often around 2 talents, provides another layer of understanding. A talent was a widely recognized unit of mass in the ancient Near East, used for various commodities including silver and gold. While copper was less valuable than silver or gold by weight, the sheer volume represented by an oxide ingot still meant considerable wealth. Imagine what 2 talents of any precious metal could buy. For copper, this wasn't pocket change. It was likely enough to fund significant transactions. It suggests that possession of even 1 ingot could signify considerable economic standing, perhaps enough to support a family for an extended period or to purchase a substantial number of animals. The value also depended on where you were in the trade network. At the source, near the mines, the copper might have been relatively cheaper, priced closer to the cost of extraction and initial smelting. But as it traveled across vast distances, subject to the risks of maritime transport and the efforts of countless middlemen, its value would have naturally increased. Each step of the journey, each risk taken by the sailors and the merchants, added to its final price. This escalating value underscores the entrepreneurial spirit of the time and the sophisticated understanding of supply and demand that characterized Bronze Age commerce. Therefore, an oxide ingot wasn't just a commodity. It was an investment, its value fluctuating with distance, risk, and regional demand. Ultimately, while we can't definitively say that an oxide ingot bought, say, exactly 500 bushels of wheat or a specific number of months of labor, the evidence strongly points to its role as a significant unit of wealth. It facilitated large-scale transactions, likely underpinning trade between powerful entities like kingdoms or major merchant houses, rather than serving as everyday coinage for small purchases. These ingots were the building blocks of Bronze Age economies, representing concentrated wealth that could be converted into a wide array of goods and services. They were the very embodiment of the economic power that flowed through the veins of the ancient world. Once an oxide ingot reached its destination, perhaps a bustling coastal city or an inland settlement, its journey as a raw material was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning its transformation into something truly useful. These ingots were not merely a store of wealth to be hoarded, but were instead destined to become the very lifeblood of Bronze Age society. Imagine the scene: skilled artisans, often working in specialized workshops, would receive these large, unwieldy chunks of copper. Their first task was to break them down into smaller, more manageable pieces, typically by heating them until red hot and then carefully fracturing the metal. This initial breakdown was crucial because it allowed for more efficient handling and melting. The real magic happened next within the intense heat of the smelting furnaces. These were not the rudimentary fires one might imagine, but purpose-built structures designed to achieve and maintain the incredibly high temperatures needed to melt copper. The broken-down pieces of oxide ingot would be placed into crucibles often made of clay and then set within these furnaces. The temperature inside could soar to over 1,000 degrees Celsius, transforming the solid copper into a shimmering liquid pool. This molten metal was the essence of Bronze Age innovation, the key ingredient for countless essential items. The next step in this meticulous process was pouring. With incredible precision and strength, the skilled workers would carefully lift the heavy, glowing crucibles and pour the molten copper into prepared molds. These molds varied widely depending on the desired final product. For tools and weapons, they might be simple open molds for flat blades or more complex two-part molds to create intricate axe heads or spear points. For ornaments or other decorative items, the molds could be even more elaborate, allowing for detailed designs to be cast directly. This stage required immense skill, as any error in temperature or pouring could result in a flawed or unusable product, a costly mistake given the value of the raw material. Once the molten copper solidified and cooled within the molds, the new objects emerged. These weren't necessarily finished products, however. Many items would then undergo further refinement, hammering, sharpening, polishing, and even alloying with tin to create bronze, a much harder and more versatile metal. This transformation of copper into bronze was a defining characteristic of the Bronze Age, enabling the creation of superior tools, weapons, and artistic pieces. So, from a large, standardized ingot came an array of items essential for daily survival, warfare, agriculture, and artistic expression. This entire process truly highlights the full cycle of production and consumption in the ancient world, from the extraction of raw materials to their careful shaping into the fundamental objects that sustained and advanced Bronze Age civilizations. Considering the immense value encapsulated within each oxide ingot, it's clear that their journey from mine to market wasn't without significant peril. These weren't just lumps of metal, they were concentrated wealth capable of arming armies or building palaces, making them irresistibly tempting targets for anyone looking to make a quick fortune. This brings us to a darker yet equally fascinating aspect of Bronze Age trade, the constant threat of piracy and theft, and the strategies ancient merchants and states developed to protect their precious cargo crossing both land and sea. On land, the dangers were ever present. Caravans transporting ingots, often alongside other valuable goods, would have moved slowly, making them vulnerable to ambushes by brigands and opportunistic raiders. These groups might prey on isolated travelers or even target larger, less guarded convoys. To counter this, merchants likely traveled in larger, well-armed groups, pooling their resources for protection. Professional guards could have been hired, much like private security forces today. Routes themselves might have been carefully chosen to avoid known bandit strongholds, perhaps sticking to more populated areas or those with natural defenses. Fortified way stations along trade routes would have offered crucial resting points and a degree of safety, places where merchants could resupply and perhaps exchange information about recent threats. But the most significant threat likely loomed on the open seas. The Mediterranean, despite being a conduit for trade, was also a hotbed of piracy. Fast, agile ships could emerge from hidden coves, overwhelming slower, heavily laden merchant vessels. The cargo of oxide ingots, being both valuable and relatively easy to offload and resell, would have been high on any pirate's wish list. Imagine the desperate struggle, the clang of bronze weapons, the shouts of fighting men, and the terrifying prospect of losing not only the valuable cargo but also one's life. This constant danger meant that security measures at sea were paramount. Merchant ships were often designed with defense in mind, perhaps equipped with a small contingent of armed sailors or even dedicated soldiers. Larger, more valuable shipments might have traveled in convoys, with multiple merchant vessels sailing together for mutual protection, making them a less appealing target for smaller pirate bands. Naval forces, if they existed in any organized form beyond royal escorts, might have patrolled key trade lanes, deterring pirates or retaliating against their strongholds. However, the vastness of the sea would have made comprehensive policing incredibly difficult. Captains would have relied on local knowledge of safe harbors and dangerous waters, navigating not just by the stars, but also by the whispers of where pirates were rumored to strike. The risk of shipwreck itself, due to storms or navigational errors, was another layer of peril, but the threat of hostile human intervention demanded a different kind of vigilance and preparation. This constant need to protect their wealth reveals the high stakes involved in Bronze Age trade and the ingenuity required to navigate not only the physical landscape, but also the treacherous human elements of the ancient world. Who ultimately held the reins of this expansive oxide ingot trade, then? Was it the iron fist of powerful Bronze Age states or the nimble hand of private enterprise? The answer, as is often the case in the ancient world, is likely a nuanced blend of both. It's improbable that a trade network of this magnitude, spanning vast distances and involving such high-value commodities, could have been purely laissez-faire. States would have had a vested interest in controlling, or at least heavily influencing, the flow of copper, a strategic resource essential for tools, weapons, and prestige goods. For emerging empires like the New Kingdom of Egypt, the Minoan palaces of Crete, or the Mycenaean kingdoms of mainland Greece, copper wasn't just a commodity, it was power. Consider the sheer scale of the operation: mining, smelting, casting, and then transporting these heavy ingots across treacherous terrain and open seas. Such undertakings often required significant organization, capital, and protection, resources that states were uniquely positioned to provide. We have evidence from various Bronze Age archives, like those from Ugarit or Amarna, that speak of royal emissaries, official gifts, and state-sponsored expeditions. For example, some scholars propose that the Mycenaean palaces, with their highly centralized economies, likely exercised considerable control over the acquisition and distribution of copper. They might have managed mining operations, organized shipping fleets, and dictated the terms of trade, ensuring a steady supply for their burgeoning arsenals and workshops. The standardized weight of the oxide ingots, corresponding to official talent units, also hints at a degree of state oversight, suggesting a system designed to facilitate taxation or tribute. However, completely state-dominated trade would have been cumbersome and inflexible, especially given the diverse cultures and geographical challenges involved. This is where private merchants likely played a crucial, indispensable role. These individual traders or merchant families would have operated within the state-sanctioned framework, but with enough autonomy to navigate local markets, assess risks, and seize opportunities. They might have been entrepreneurial agents working on behalf of the state, or independent operators filling niches that state-run enterprises couldn't efficiently cover. Think of them as ancient venture capitalists, willing to invest their own capital and take personal risks for potentially enormous profits. The widespread distribution of ingots across various, sometimes smaller, settlements suggests a more organic, market-driven element to the trade, perhaps facilitated by these independent actors who could react more quickly to supply and demand fluctuations. Furthermore, the nature of control might have varied significantly by region and over time. In resource-rich Cyprus, for instance, powerful city-states might have held tight monopolies over their copper mines and initial smelting operations, exporting the ingots under strict state supervision. Meanwhile, in regions like the Aegean, which were consumers rather than producers of copper, the emphasis might have shifted to managing import, with private merchants acting as vital intermediaries, navigating the complexities of international trade and delivering goods to the palace gates. The Burun shipwreck itself, with its diverse cargo from multiple regions, points to a complex network involving various actors, suggesting that even if the primary patron was a powerful entity, numerous smaller transactions and entrepreneurial ventures contributed to the overall exchange. Thus, the enduring legacy of the Oxide ingots is not just about the metal itself, but about the intricate economic dance between centralized power and individual initiative that shaped the ancient world. The impressive scale and remarkable consistency of the Oxide ingot trade lead us to a fascinating question. How did such a complex network operate with any degree of reliability and security? It's highly probable that this extensive trade wasn't simply a free-for-all, but rather underpinned by various forms of early diplomacy and even formal agreements between states. Imagine the leaders of a copper-producing region like Cyprus needing to ensure their valuable shipments could traverse the open seas and hostile territories to reach their eager customers in Egypt or the Aegean. Without some understanding, some form of mutual respect, trade would have been fraught with insurmountable risks. Consider the potential for piracy and theft that we touched upon earlier. A ship laden with hundreds of Oxide ingots represented an incredible fortune and an irresistible target. To mitigate these dangers, ancient rulers likely engaged in constant diplomatic efforts. We see glimpses of this in archaeological finds like the Amarna letters, a collection of diplomatic correspondence between Egyptian pharaohs and other rulers of the Near East. These tablets, though not explicitly discussing Oxide ingots, reveal a world of intricate alliances, requests for safe passage, and exchanges of gifts and personnel. It's not a huge leap to imagine that discussions around trade routes and the security of valuable commodities, including copper, would have been central to these royal negotiations. Rulers might have guaranteed safe passage for another kingdom's merchants through their territories or ports, perhaps in exchange for reciprocal favors, access to markets, or even a share of the profits. This wasn't altruism, it was pragmatic self-interest, recognizing that stable trade benefited everyone involved. Moreover, the very standardization of the Oxide ingots themselves, with their consistent weight and perhaps even quality, suggests a level of agreed-upon norms that goes beyond mere custom. It hints at the possibility of early trade treaties or formal protocols that set the terms of exchange. While we don't have surviving written treaties specifically detailing the Oxide ingot trade, we know that written agreements existed in the Bronze Age. The famous Kadesh Treaty between the Egyptians and the Hittites, for example, is a testament to the sophistication of Bronze Age international law and diplomacy. It's plausible that less dramatic but equally vital agreements concerning trade routes, tariffs, and acceptable forms of payment were commonplace, albeit perhaps less grandly recorded. These unwritten or lost agreements would have provided a crucial framework for merchants and states to operate within, fostering a degree of trust necessary for long-distance commerce. These diplomatic efforts and potential trade agreements weren't just about securing goods, they were about fostering interstate relations and maintaining a fragile balance of power. Access to copper was a strategic imperative, and states would have used diplomatic channels to ensure a steady supply, preventing rival powers from monopolizing the resource. Imagine a Mycenaean king sending envoys to a Cypriot ruler, not just to buy copper, but to solidify a political relationship that guaranteed continued access to this vital metal. Such interactions could easily evolve into more formal alliances, with trade serving as the economic glue binding disparate nations together. This highlights how economic interdependence, driven by commodities like oxide ingots, inadvertently laid the groundwork for complex international relations, demonstrating that even in this ancient world, cooperation was often as powerful a force as conflict in shaping global interactions. The enduring significance of oxide ingots could well extend beyond archaeological digs and scientific analyses, leaving subtle but persistent echoes in the myths, legends, and oral traditions that shaped the cultural consciousness of the Bronze Age and subsequent classical civilizations. These weren't merely objects of trade. Their very existence represented immense wealth, strategic power, and the incredible journeys involved in their transport. It's not a stretch to imagine that such formidable commodities, central to the economic and political fabric of the time, would find their way into the stories people told. Think about the legendary tales of treasure and immense riches that abound in ancient mythology. While often depicted as gold, jewels, or precious artifacts, the concept of a highly valued, mass-produced raw material like copper, essential for weapons and tools, might have subtly influenced these narratives. Could the vast hoards described in some myths be, at their core, reflections of the material wealth that flowed through these ancient trade networks, perhaps even symbolizing the power wielded by those who controlled such resources? The very process of acquiring and transporting these heavy, valuable ingots across perilous seas would naturally lend itself to heroic sagas. Imagine the inspiration for tales of epic voyages, fraught with danger and culminating in the acquisition of vital, life-sustaining metals, mirroring the real-life struggles of Bronze Age mariners. For example, the myths of Jason and the Argonauts seeking the Golden Fleece, or Odysseus's long, arduous journey home, although not directly about copper, capture the spirit of perilous maritime expeditions undertaken for valuable commodities or strategic goals. The metaphorical, golden aspect of the fleece could symbolize any coveted resource that brought power and prosperity, much like copper did in the Bronze Age. Consider also the imagery of cattle, a common motif in many ancient cultures, symbolizing wealth, strength, and sustenance. The unique, oxide shape of the ingots might have reinforced this connection, subtly linking the abstract idea of traded copper with the tangible, living symbol of prosperity. Perhaps this visual association, even if unconscious, elevated the ingot beyond a mere lump of metal to something imbued with a deeper, more resonant meaning within the collective psyche. This intertwining of economic reality with symbolic representation allowed these ingots to permeate cultural narratives in ways that modern currency rarely does. They were not just a means to an end. They embodied the very essence of worth and the adventurous spirit of an interconnected world. Furthermore, the very act of obtaining copper from distant lands and transforming it into useful objects was a sophisticated process, bordering on the magical for those without metallurgical knowledge. This transformation from raw ore to gleaming metal, crucial for technological advancement, could have contributed to the mystique surrounding the trade. Tales of skilled smiths, divine artisans, and the acquisition of powerful metals often feature in mythology, reflecting the profound impact of metallurgy on ancient societies. The oxide ingot, as a cornerstone of this transformative process, was not just a commodity but a tangible link in a chain of creation that fueled progress and inspired wonder. Its role in shaping the very tools of civilization undoubtedly left an indelible mark on the imagination, manifesting in stories that celebrated the acquisition and mastery of these vital materials. When we place oxide ingots alongside other forms of ancient currency, a clearer picture emerges of their unique economic role. In the Bronze Age, there wasn't a single universal currency like the dollars or euros we use today. Instead, various commodities served as mediums of exchange, each with its own advantages and limitations. Grain, for instance, was fundamental. It represented sustenance, a direct measure of agricultural production, and was easily divisible for small transactions. However, grain was bulky, perishable, and its value could fluctuate wildly based on harvest yields. Imagine trying to conduct long-distance trade with bushels of wheat. It was simply impractical for large-scale economic activity across vast distances. Then there were precious metals, particularly silver. Silver, often cast into rings, spirals, or simply weighed out in chunks, held a high intrinsic value. It was durable, portable, and relatively easy to standardize by weight, making it ideal for more significant transactions and for storing wealth. The concept of the talent as a unit of weight, which we also see applied to oxide ingots, was often associated with silver. However, silver was rare, requiring specialized mining and metallurgical processes, and its supply could be limited, making it less accessible for everyday transactions and perhaps too valuable for bulk commodity trade. This is where oxide ingots carve out their distinct niche. Unlike perishable grain or scarce silver, copper was abundant in certain regions like Cyprus and was vital for tool and weapon production. The ingot's standardized weight of around 29 kilograms made it a perfect unit for wholesale trade, particularly for bulk acquisition by states or large merchant houses. It was heavy enough to represent substantial value, but not so precious that it was out of reach for general commerce or resource acquisition. While silver might have been used for high-value personal transactions or diplomatic gifts, copper ingots functioned as the backbone of industrial trade, facilitating the movement of raw materials critical for Bronze Age economies. One key advantage of the oxide ingot over raw lumps of copper was its distinctive, recognizable shape. This uniform design likely simplified accounting, quality control, and perhaps even served as a visible symbol of authentic, standardized trade goods. It was a tangible, easily verifiable unit in an era before complex accounting systems. The limitations, however, included its considerable weight, which still posed logistical challenges for transport, especially over land. Moreover, copper, while valuable, was not as universally accepted as silver for every type of transaction. It was primarily valued for its utility in crafting tools, weapons, and other bronze artifacts. In essence, oxide ingots were the industrial-scale currency of the Bronze Age, complementing rather than replacing other forms of exchange. They streamlined the acquisition of a crucial raw material, enabling the mass production of bronze goods and fueling the intricate economic machinery of a globally connected world. They represent a sophisticated solution to the challenges of large-scale commodity exchange, demonstrating the economic ingenuity of our ancient ancestors in a period long before coinage became common. Even with the incredible strides in archaeological and scientific research, the story of oxide ingots is far from complete, leaving us with a fascinating array of unanswered questions that continue to drive new investigations. One of the most sought-after answers lies in achieving even more precise provenance studies. While we've made significant progress in tracing copper to broad regions like Cyprus or Sardinia, pinpointing the exact mine or even specific production sites within those regions remains a significant challenge. Imagine if we could identify not just the island, but the very valley or mountain range where a particular ingot's copper was extracted. This level of detail would allow us to reconstruct ancient supply chains with astonishing accuracy, revealing the specific trade agreements and relationships between individual mines and distant buyers. Advanced isotopic analysis, combined with new geological surveys of ancient mining areas, holds the key to unlocking these finer details, moving us closer to understanding the microeconomic networks of the Bronze Age. Another captivating mystery revolves around the elusive markings and inscriptions found on some Oxide ingots. These symbols, sometimes resembling early forms of writing or abstract signs, have yet to be fully deciphered. Are they owner's marks indicating who produced or commissioned the ingot? Do they signify a specific weight standard or quality control measure unique to a particular workshop? Could they be religious symbols or protective charms? Each potential interpretation opens up a new avenue for understanding the people and institutions involved in this trade. Future research will undoubtedly focus on comparative epigraphy, examining these markings alongside other Bronze Age scripts and symbols from the Mediterranean world. As more ingots are discovered, and as our understanding of ancient languages evolves, the possibility of decoding these messages becomes increasingly tantalizing, promising to reveal direct insights into the administrative and commercial practices of the time. Beyond their origin and markings, the specifics of the Oxide ingot production process still hold many secrets. How exactly were these massive ingots cast to such consistent weights and shapes using Bronze Age technology? Was there a specialized, highly skilled workforce dedicated solely to ingot production, or was it a more communal effort? What were the precise temperatures used for smelting and casting, and how did they control the purity of the copper? Understanding these details would offer invaluable insights into ancient metallurgy and industrial organization. Experimental archaeology, where researchers attempt to replicate ancient processes using similar tools and materials, is proving essential here. By trying to recreate the conditions of a Bronze Age copper workshop, we can gain a deeper appreciation for the ingenuity and practical knowledge of the ancient metallurgists, piecing together the intricate steps from raw ore to finished ingot. Furthermore, while the Burun shipwreck provided an unparalleled snapshot of a single trade voyage, many questions remain about the broader patterns of distribution and exchange. Were there specific trade seasons? How did political upheavals or natural disasters impact the flow of ingots? What was the typical lifespan of a merchant ship involved in this trade? Integrating data from numerous excavation sites, combined with climate modeling and even ancient textual analysis, can help us build more comprehensive models of Bronze Age trade dynamics. This holistic approach will allow us to move beyond individual finds and identify larger trends, revealing the resilience and vulnerabilities of this interconnected global system. The story of Oxide ingots is not just about metal. It's about the people, the journeys, and the intricate web of connections that shaped the ancient world, a narrative that continues to unfold with every new discovery and every insightful analysis. The story of the Oxide ingots is more than just a tale of ancient trade. It is a powerful testament to the sheer ingenuity, organizational prowess, and deep interconnectedness of Bronze Age peoples. Think about it, without even the most basic technologies we take for granted today, like accurate maps, advanced navigation, or even digital communication, these ancient societies built and maintained a complex economic system that spanned continents. Their ability to locate vast copper deposits, develop the sophisticated mining techniques to extract ore, and then transform that raw material into standardized, valuable ingots speaks volumes about their understanding of geology and metallurgy. This wasn't primitive work, it was a highly specialized craft passed down through generations of skilled artisans who knew how to control extreme temperatures and shape molten metal with remarkable precision. Consider the level of organization required to sustain such a system, from the miners deep within the earth, to the metallurgists smelting the ore, to the shipbuilders constructing vessels capable of long-distance voyages, and the navigators charting courses across open seas. Countless individuals had to coordinate their efforts seamlessly. Imagine the logistics of transporting tons of these heavy ingots from inland mines to coastal ports, then loading them onto ships, protecting them from pirates, and finally distributing them to distant markets. This required not just physical labor, but intricate planning, trusted relationships, and a shared understanding of international trade practices. It speaks to a level of administrative sophistication that deeply challenges our traditional perceptions of primitive, ancient societies. They managed supply chains, established quality control, and implemented a form of standardized currency long before the concept of a global economy was formally articulated. Moreover, the very existence of these widespread trade networks facilitated by the Oxide Ingots highlights the remarkable human drive for connection and exchange. Despite vast distances, language barriers, and differing cultural norms, these people sought out ways to interact, to trade, and to share resources. It wasn't merely about survival, it was about ambition, about seeking prosperity, and about forging relationships that transcended immediate tribal or regional boundaries. This constant movement of goods also meant a circulation of ideas, technologies, and artistic styles, enriching the diverse cultures of the Bronze Age Mediterranean. The ingenuity wasn't just in making the ingots, it was in creating the entire ecosystem that allowed them to flow, fostering an early form of globalization driven by a fundamental impulse to connect and thrive. These ancient ancestors, through their mastery of resources and their visionary trade, laid fundamental groundwork for the complex societies that followed, demonstrating profound capabilities often overlooked in our modern narratives. The widespread use and recognition of the Oxide ingot as a common medium of exchange extended far beyond its economic utility, fostering a remarkable sense of shared understanding and cultural familiarity across diverse Bronze Age societies. Imagine a world where people from different lands, speaking different languages, could instantly recognize the value and purpose of a heavy, oxide-shaped piece of copper. This shared recognition acted as a subtle yet powerful cultural bridge, uniting disparate peoples through commerce rather than conquest or imposed ideology. It provided a common language not of words but of value and exchange, enabling interactions that might otherwise have been fraught with misunderstanding. This shared economic language meant that merchants, regardless of their origin, implicitly understood the rules of the game when dealing with oxide ingots. It suggested a mutual respect for the standardization, a trust in the system, and a shared set of expectations regarding trade. This wasn't merely about exchanging goods, it was about building relationships and fostering a degree of predictability in a world that could often be uncertain. Think of the cultural nuances that must have been exchanged alongside the copper. Perhaps gestures, greetings, or even snippets of language picked up in bustling harbor towns and distant markets. The very act of trading these ingots created scenarios where people from different backgrounds had to interact, negotiate, and find common ground. This daily interaction, driven by the practicalities of commerce, inevitably led to a diffusion of ideas, technologies, and artistic influences. A merchant from Mycenae trading with a counterpart from Ugarit wasn't just exchanging copper for tin. They were exchanging glimpses into each other's worlds, their customs, and their ways of life. The unifying force of the Oxide ingot trade also extended to shared technologies and artistic trends. As goods moved along trade routes, so too did the knowledge of how to produce them and the aesthetic preferences that shaped their design. Copper ingots, once melted down, became the raw material for tools, weapons, and intricate artworks that often displayed a blend of influences from across the Mediterranean. A pottery design from Cyprus might inspire a local craftsman in Sardinia, or a metalworking technique from Anatolia could find its way to Crete. This cross-cultural pollination was a direct byproduct of the economic network facilitated by these ingots, demonstrating how a common commercial interest could inadvertently lead to a richer, more interconnected cultural landscape. The trust and familiarity built through generations of trade in these distinct copper ingots laid the groundwork for a broader cultural exchange, showing that even in ancient times, economic ties could transcend boundaries and forge unexpected connections. We've journeyed deep inside the forgotten code of the Oxide ingots trade secrets that linked the Bronze Age world, uncovering a sophisticated ancient network that predates many of our assumptions about global trade. From their peculiar shape to their standardized weight, from the depths of the Burun shipwreck to the very mines they came from, these Oxide ingots reveal a Bronze Age far more interconnected and complex than often imagined, demonstrating a fundamental human drive for exchange. Remember, the past is not just history, it's a living narrative waiting to be decoded, reminding us that even the most ancient objects hold profound lessons for our interconnected present. If you found this journey as captivating as we did, be sure to subscribe for more historical mysteries and share your thoughts in the comments below about what surprised you most about these incredible